Welcome to our weekly Mitzvah Shabbos program. And today I want to share with you, there are questions that mothers and wives wrote to the Rebbe complaining about their husband or their children drinking mashke. Now a lot of answers are in Igros Kodesh, and the reason that the Rebbe wrote that in Igros Kodesh is because of the questions. Now I decided I'm not going to share with you exactly what they wrote, because there's other things involved. I'm just going to share with you the Rebbe's answers about drinking mashke. But before I do that, I want to share with you an article that a goy years ago wrote. I have the article. Very interesting. He came to 770, and the Rabbi Groner told him that he should go to Rabbi Mindel and interview Rabbi Mindel to Long Beach, which he did. Something very interesting. What did the guy write? The guy took a sabbatical. He spend a year traveling around the world, America, Eretz Yisrael, Australia, England. He wants to see what a Yidden. He heard of Mistagdim, and he heard of Chassidim, and in Chassidim he heard there's so many different customs, so many different Chassidim. He always was wondering. So he took a year off to investigate what are Mistagdim, what are Chassidim, and what are Jews Bechlal. So he went to the shuls, he went to yeshivas. So he writes there that he was in place. I'm just going to mention a few, not everything, but a few. He was in Eretz Yisrael, he was in Vishnitz, he writes in Bnei Brak, he was in Yerushalayim, in other places. Then he came to America, he was in Cleveland, he was in Tulsa Yeshiva. Then he went to Los Angeles, he went to Baltimore, what else? It's a few places he went. And the Chassidish places, Williamsburg, Borough Park, Union City. And he writes more or less what he saw each one. The last thing he went to was to 770. So first of all, he writes the Kloisenberger Rebbe, this is the old Kloisenberger, Olav Hasholem. He looked very holy, big payas, long beard, his eyes. He spoke a few minutes, then he stopped. And they were singing a lot, very impressed. He went to Williamsburg, he went to Satmarer, also a lot of people, they were singing, he was very impressed. He went to other people in Israel, so I think bells, they were looking in a paper when he spoke, but that's fine. And he was very impressed, and their customs. So he saw a little bit difference between one and the other, not much. The way they prayed, the way they davened, they were singing, they were dancing, they were clapping with their hands. Some more, some less. This is what he was describing. He went to the literature, of course. He saw there wasn't so much singing. But the Chassidish, he saw that people on Shabbos, they all had Kiddushim, say L'chaim. They all said L'chaim. I'm mentioning here because L'chaim, we're talking about L'chaim the last week. Everybody said L'chaim. They had a Kiddush, and then they had a Simcha, but everybody had mashka on the table and wine on the table. He came to 770. Here he writes, two things that he didn't see anywhere else. One thing he saw was the Rebbe, humble. The other Rebbes were dancing with the feet, with the hands, under the Gishriyan, loud. The Rebbe comes into prayer, to daven, humble. You can't even tell that he's a very holy man, he writes. He knows he's a holy man. But the humbleness. This is what got different than anybody else. Then he saw Farbrengen. Also, thousands of people. The Rebbe spoke an hour and a half. Everybody was quiet. He did not understand what the Rebbe is saying a word. But how can a person speak so much without stopping, without looking into it? Just speak and speak and speak and speak. Very impressed. But the ikir that he was impressed was he was sitting 7 hours. He didn't lean back once. You know, the Rebbe never leaned back once, but Farbrengen. The only time he leaned back is when Rabbi Yochanan Gordon or Rabbi Shimon Gordon said a story for 5 minutes, I think. But in general, the Rebbe never leaned back. That means he saw Farbrengen wasn't just a speech. He's a goy. He doesn't. But he says he saw how he was given over. That he never saw anywhere. Another thing he was impressed, very impressed. Other Hasidim, other Rebbes, he said, the big crowd, when they said L'chaim, they made like this to everybody. L'chaim, 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 L'chaim. That's, he said, with the hands. L'chaim to everybody, and everybody answered L'chaim. That's it. By the Rebbe, he says, people were with the cups, they stuck out their hands, L'chaim, and he motioned, he said L'chaim, with his head to every single person. There were hundreds of thousands of people. He wouldn't start talking until every single person was a L'chaim, and then the person drank. That he never saw. How every individual is important. So when a person says L'chaim, the Rebbe answers L'chaim to every single person. This is something you have to, he's a goy, but he was very midai to see everything. So this is, I wanted to mention about this. Now, going back to what I mentioned about drinking mashke, and the truth is, there was a woman that wrote to the Rebbe that by drinking mashke, her husband has a problem with the liver. There's letters, push it, drinking mashke. So here I want to just read to you inside certain answers. What the Rebbe answered, some of them are in Igros Kodesh, some of them are not. But these are answers to people about drinking mashke. So first the Rebbe says here, a rumor reached me which caused me pain, that sometimes he is not careful regarding drinking mashke. So somebody asked, what if it's even a small cup? Can you drink? So the Rebbe answers here, it's already known what our Rabbeim spoke out against drinking mashke, meaning not to drink mashke at all unless it's a zman simcha. And even then, it must be with a limited amount, according to every person. Meaning that if there is a possible concern that he will get drunk from even a small amount of mashke, then for him, even that small amount is forbidden. Then another Sikh that Rebbe writes, I see a difference between the effect of a Farbrengen with little mashke versus the Farbrengen where mashke is used to the extent that people go out of the kelim. So there is a difference. To another person, the Rebbe answers, it is fundamental that they should limit themselves to 3 cups, and that all 3 cups together should equal less than a revis. You know how much it is? A revis. A revis is 2.9 ounces. It should be less than that. So when the Rebbe says 3 cups, you can't take a cup, 3 of them. It has to be very, very small. The only exception is that the wine of Kiddush is not counted for the count of the 3 cups. I'm saying this straight out. I'm not saying this on Shabbos when there are no recordings. And then people from other places will come along and want to play around with the meaning of my words. I'm saying this in a time when what I'm saying can be recorded and engraved forever. And then this recording can reach to whoever someone wants to hear it. This is being said with the full strength as when spoken originally and as well as the future, that until 40 years old, you'll be yoitze with these 3 cups, and even less. Like the story of when Michal Dvorkin heard the great news of Yutas Kislev that the Alter Rebbe was freed. He danced around holding the Alter Rebbe's apartment, holding mashke, but he didn't actually drink. Now somebody says that the mashke helps him overcome the Yitzhahara. Azavort, I think is one of the mothers, wrote that his son said that drinking mashke overcome the Yitzhahara. So there's an answer from the Rebbe. Unlike the opinion of those who mistakenly think that through drinking mashke they'll remove the mud of the nefesh habahamis and increase the nefesh alikis. Rather, the opposite is true. As the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke and instructed to publish that mashke is a dover mos. It's disgusting. Those who want to say that it helps them in serving Hashem are wrapping this in a silk garment, making it look holy. And they even go on to say that this is what the Rebbe wants. They think they are strengthening the nefesh halikis over the nefesh habamis. But the opposite is true. Through this they are strengthening the nefesh habahamis over the nefesh halikis. He is taking the king's head and digging it into the place where the Yetzer Hara is. Now, people think that by drinking mashke and verbringen is mekusher. So the Rebbe writes, all the excuses are not relevant here, saying that there are bigger matters that they do not listen to. We need to know that this is not a small matter. In fact, this can be the indicator of whether or not he is holding on the Rebbe's klamke. Klamke means handle. The fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe instructed to publish that it's a dover mos shows us that this is something that is relevant and for all future generations that mashke is a dover mos. Now, some people don't drink much, but they're happy that they give mashke to other people. So the Rebbe writes, there are those not only drink mashke on their own, but they encourage their friends to drink, like what's written in Pirkei Avos, which I don't want to quote that. I don't want to elaborate on a matter which is painful and disturbing. And I think, the Rebbe didn't say it, of course, I think that the Rebbe says what it says in Pirkei Avos, Kol ha-machti es-harabim em aspikim biyodai lasois tshuva. They should not only guard themselves, rather they must also ensure that the other won't drink more than 3. Now here the Rebbe says, I heard that there are those who grant themselves a heter. Such a thing never existed. Please give over the message to Yisrael, to Kfar Chabad, to Teres Hames, and to friends, what I'm saying. A person that is drunk, is not a chassid. And the Rebbe writes here, it's obvious that what we're saying about simcha isn't referring to drinking one small cup, rather another to the point of intoxication. But a shikr is not a chosid, and how much more so not a Chabad chosid, who is all about intellect and understanding. Moreover, intoxication is related to Lot, not to Avram, and therefore not to Yitzchak and not to Yankif, and not to his son Yosef. The name of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Nosei Adoir. Now he says there are those who consider themselves Spitz Chabad, and therefore think that the restrictions don't apply to him. So to them we are saying specifically because he thinks that these restrictions do not apply to him. Therefore they apply specifically to him. And about his claim that he's Spitz Chabad, so firstly the Rebbe says it's a doubt if he's Spitz Chabad. And secondly, that not what Spitz Chabad is about. That's not what Spitz Chabad is about. What Spitz Chabad is truly about is spreading Chassidus. This is the decree that you have no permission to doubt. It's Chukah Chakakti, Gzeiro Gazarti, Ve'ein Loch Rishus, Laharir Achareo. Whether you understand or you don't understand. This is what the Rebbe says. Now, the Bocher, this is especially relevant to Bochrim, since they are in the age of heat. Yemei Chamimus, they should be Yoitze with watching how an elderly Chassid nears the Kelishke, small L'chaim cup. But Bochrim themselves should not drink. And only then, when a Bocher does not drink, he is called a good Bocher, a Bocher of Timchet Mimim. Then the Rebbe here also another few. In the famous Sikha from the Frierdiker Rebbe regarding drinking mashke, he says, the mashkes are dover mos, and anyone who will look into the Sikha, they will realize what mashke is. Now, based on the Gemara, which states that until age 40, eating is better. From then on, drinking is better. Everything which I will say now mainly applies to those under 40 years old, and especially Bachrim, who are not yet married, since for them there are even more reasons why to avoid drinking mashke. But even those who are older than 40 need to minimize in drinking mashke. Now here the Rebbe speaks about binge by Fabringen, what a Fabringen is, and about Kiddush. So everything that was said is applicable all year round, whether weekday, Shabbos, or Yontif, as well as in all places, whether this country or other countries. Most probably this will be published, he says, and given over to everybody. Only in regards to one day a year Purim, I don't want to mix in for two reasons. One reason is because Purim we need to reach the level of Atal Yado. And while being in such state, the Yetzer Hara won't have the knowledge to convince him to take mashke. And the second and main reason is that since by the time of Purim comes the Mashiach will probably come, and there'll be kuli mashke. Anyways, this is what I wanted to share with you about mashke. Now, I'm doing this because we mentioned about mashke before, about l'chaim, and also it's going out of hand. Parents, even today, there are bachrim that Pasha drink, and that's you could see here. And the chassidim, they're called chassidim. The Rebbe says they're not called chassidim. You're not allowed to drink mashke. I don't understand why some things the Rebbe said is holy, which is good, but when it comes to things that they don't like, what the Rebbe says means nothing. This drinking mashke should stop. And this is what I thought I would say today. In Mitzvah Hashem, next week, we will continue our weekly program. Thank you.